The Case of Eliza Fenning, Guilty or Innocent, podcast number 1. You're such a genuine gem. Thank you for clicking on my podcast. I'm Brooke McKenna, and today we're talking about the case of Eliza Fenning. Was she rightfully found guilty or killed as an innocent woman? Now, welcome to my first episode of Crimes of Past and Present podcast. First off, I want to thank you all for being so incredibly patient with me here on Patreon. Your endless support constantly baffles me, and I just want each one of you to know how grateful I am for you. And before we get into the case, I want to thank each one of you individually, and I'm so sorry if I mispronounce any of your names. Please let me know down below because I'm horrible at that sometimes, but I do appreciate you all. So thank you to Patricia, Laurel, Tanya, Michaela, Woot Makeup, Anne, Luann, Andre, Frank, Laura, Bex, Madeline, Nikki, Ken, Stephanie, Jill, daughter of Remus, Erica, and Kim. I seriously love each and every one of you, and I cannot believe that you want to support me further than just watching my videos. And every day I count you as one of the things that I am grateful for, and I can't even express in words how much it means to me that you care. And so I do hope with these podcasts that I can give back to you, and I hope that you enjoy them. And also, if you have any requests of cases you want me to do on this podcast, I would love for you to leave those down below. But for this case, it is one of the more vintage cases, and it is quite the interesting one. We're going to go back into the 1800s for this, and it's not necessarily a murder, but an attempted murder of 4 different people. So let's get into the story. It was 1815 in England. Elizabeth, who went by Eliza Fenning, lived in London. She had worked as a domestic servant since the age of 14, as she had grown up in quite the poor family and needed to make money. All of her employees said she was lively, amusing, and hardworking, and she was a small but beautiful young girl. Now, in January of 1815, at the age of 23, Eliza got a job working for Robert Turner, who was a tradesman of articles used by lawyers and known as a law stationer. In other words, he was very wealthy and lived with his wife Charlotte at 68 Chancery Lane. Now, Eliza worked along with 2 apprentices named Roger and Thomas, as well as another maid like her named Sarah. So they had a lot of employees in their household, had enough money to do so, and Eliza was really thrilled to get this job at such a nice house and knew she could be making good money there. Now, Eliza had been working for the Turners with no huge problems for about a month and a half by this point, but on March 21st of 1815, everything would change. Eliza loved to cook and would often try to make the best meals for the Turners, try to get them to try new things, and loved to just put her own spin on things. And one of her favorite things to make was actually dumplings, and she had asked to have some yeast delivered to make them, and this was granted to her. And so that day, she got to work making rump steak, potatoes, and dumplings for the Turner family to have that afternoon at about 3 p.m. Robert was inviting his father, Orlebar, over for the meal, and it was a full table awaiting to be served this delicious, appetizing meal that Eliza had promised them. Now, they began to eat, and not long after, Charlotte would head up to her room saying that she didn't feel very well. There, she began to get sick, and she wasn't the only one. Robert and Orlebar started having the same symptoms, and at this point, everyone, even Eliza, began to get sick. The family doctor, John Marshall, was summoned, and he got there by 9 p.m. He had been called by the apprentice named Roger, and everyone in the house was complaining of excruciating pain in their stomach and abdomens. Oliver's wife, Margaret, was then contacted because she didn't end up going to the meal that night. She was still at home, so she was contacted by Roger as well, and he had told her that she needed to come immediately because everyone thought that all of these people were going to die of this. I mean, they were having excruciating pains and getting sick constantly. Now, Dr. Marshall believed he knew what was wrong with them and that they had all been poisoned. Now, hearing this, the man of the household, Robert, said he knew what they had been poisoned by and that he had a packet of arsenic that he normally kept in his office drawer to kill vermin, which was very often during those days. It wasn't hard to get your hands on arsenic, but many people used it to kill, and not kill people, but kill little vermin. And so they would just have these on hand. However, the packet that he normally kept had gone missing, and he had said this has been about 2 weeks prior that he noticed that it was gone. Now, the doctor got to work looking around the kitchen when he came across a pan that had once contained the dumpling mix that had been used to make it. He added some warm water to the dough and watched the arsenic fall to the bottom in a white powder. And this said to him that he was right. They had been poisoned. Now, ELIZA was a main suspect in the attempted poisoning, obviously, because she had been the one to make the dumplings and make the food that day. Fortunately, everyone had survived, so it was just attempted, but they did take her into custody, and she said she had nothing to do with it, and that the milk that the other maid named Sarah had brought that day for the dumplings might have been the cause, because it wasn't her. Now, ELIZA admitted that the yeast she used was oddly colored at the bottom, and that after they were made, the dumplings, they appeared to be very black and heavy, but she didn't know why. She had even eaten some herself, and they tasted fine. However, then she and everyone else were throwing up and apparently had been poisoned. Now, ELIZA was sent to the Clerkenwell prison to await her trial, and on April 11th of 1815, she would be on trial at the Old Bailey for 4 counts of administering poison with the intent to murder, and the apprentices of this household as well as the other maid were brought in to testify against her. They said that ELIZA was alone the entire time in the kitchen that the dumplings were being made, and Roger, the one who summoned the doctor, even said that he had seen ELIZA go into the drawer in the owner Robert's office that contained the arsenic several times on her own, and Roger also said that he had tried to eat a piece of the dumplings after dinner, after everyone else was done, but strangely enough, ELIZA strongly advised him not to touch it. In court, ELIZA would say that the reason that she went into Robert's office in that drawer at all was that it contained scraps of paper for lighting the fire, and that she would often have to go in to get those to light the fire as she was being asked to, and that's all that she was in there for. She also said that the other apprentice, Thomas, had known about this and would often tell her to go get the paper, but he wouldn't come forward and he was not able to testify in her defense. Then Charlotte Turner herself would get on the stand and tell what she believed to be ELIZA's motive. She said that about a month before the poisoning, she had almost fired ELIZA. She had 2 young men over as guests for the night and had allegedly found ELIZA in their room partially undressed. Now, ELIZA had said that she was only trying to grab a candle really quick when she was going to take a bath, but Charlotte was close to firing her that night because of it. But for whatever reason, they worked it out, and Charlotte decided not to and to keep her on the staff. But a month later, on October 17th, the night before the incident, ELIZA had offered to make the whole household her famous and amazing dumplings. Now, Charlotte said that she told ELIZA she didn't really want them, but ELIZA promised her that they would be good, and she finally agreed. But ELIZA said she used the same flour to make the dumplings that she used in the beefsteak pie that was for the staff in the house. The staff would eat an hour before the family to get it out of the way, and they had ate it and they were fine. They hadn't gotten sick. She said it could have been the yeast, as she had seen a red sediment at the bottom after she used it, but oddly enough, the remains of the yeast had no arsenic found in it. But the knives on the table that were used for the meal that day by the family had allegedly turned black, which is caused or thought to be caused by arsenic. Now ELIZA told the court, "I am truly innocent of the whole charge. I am innocent. Indeed I am. I liked my place. I was very comfortable. As to my master saying I did not assist him, I was too ill. I had no concern with the drawer at all. When I wanted a piece of paper, I always asked for it." Now ELIZA pleaded not guilty, saying that she had eaten the dumplings herself, and unlike what was being said, ELIZA also said that there were many staff and even Charlotte in the kitchen that day with her. The prosecution ended their closing statements saying, "Gentlemen, if poison had been given even to a dog, one would suppose that common humanity would have prompted us to assist it in its agonies. Here is the case of a master and a mistress being both poisoned, and no assistance was offered. Gentlemen, I have now stated all the facts as they have arisen, and I leave the case in your hands, being fully persuaded that whatever your verdict may be, you will discharge your duty both to your God and to your country." After that, it was no surprise to the courtroom that in just a few minutes the jury found ELIZA FENNING guilty and sentenced her to death. She had to be carried out of the courtroom uttering frightful screams, and after that, while in prison, she wrote to her fiancé, "They have, which is the most cruelest thing in the world, brought me in guilty." And many in the public believed that she had been wrongfully convicted, and in fact the media was pushing for an appeal, and a lot of them were putting up petitions that were sent to the Home Secretary, the Lord Chancellor, and the Prince Regent asking for a delay in her execution. Now, none of them believed that she deserved this delay, unfortunately, and she began to write letters to the newspapers who had tried to help her, saying, "Thank you for trying to help me anyway, even if nothing is really coming of it." And she was very sweet and very thankful. And then she requested to do one last thing. She wanted to meet with the Turners themselves, and it was said that the Turners actually went to the prison she was at to talk with her. Now, there she allegedly accused Charlotte of having an affair and knowing how the arsenic got into the dumplings herself. Now, it's unknown how the Turners responded to this or exactly how she placed it, but it is said that she was then blaming the Turners, especially Charlotte, instead of herself, but nothing that she would do would change her outcome. And on July 26th of 1815, she would be hanged in front of 50,000 people. And she would say, "I wish to leave the world. It is all vanity and vexation of spirit, but it is a cruel thing to die innocently. Yet I freely forgive everyone and die in charity with all the world, but cannot forget my injured innocence." Now she was wearing a white muslin gown tied at the waist with ribbon and a white muslin cap and a pair of high-laced lilac boots. This was her wedding outfit. The day of her hanging was supposed to be the day of her wedding to her fiancé. And now her family, instead of paying for wedding fees and having a happy celebration, had to pay 14 shillings for her body for burial. Now, after this, the Turners were actually one of the most hated families. The public really sided with ELIZA over them, and they even had mobs outside of their house for days. And it was found that before ELIZA had been killed, a chemist named Gibson had gone to the sheriff saying that the previous year Robert had called him in a wild and deranged state, saying, "My dear Gibson, do for God's sake get me secured and confined, for I am at liberty. I shall do some mischief. I shall destroy myself and my wife. I must and shall do it, unless all means of destruction are removed out of my way. Therefore do, my good friend, have me put under some restraint. Something from above tells me I must do it, and unless I'm prevented, I certainly shall do it." Now, there was also a shop owner who came forward saying that Robert had come in before the poisonings and was trying to buy arsenic himself, but because he was showing symptoms of insanity, they didn't allow the sale to go through, knowing what arsenic could do to a human, and were worried about what he would do with it. Now, of course, because he had money, no one was really told about this. He was well known in the community, so it probably would have been stifled. even if he would have been showing these signs, but all of these statements were ignored. All of these were told to the officers, the investigators, before ELIZA was hanged, and no one cared. Another chemist even decided to put an experiment on where he would put arsenic in dumplings that he made and cook them and see if they would turn out black and hard like ELIZA's had. But they didn't. They didn't look any different than regular dumplings at all, even with the arsenic inside. Now, 13 years later, in 1828, it was said that a son of Alibar Turner died in a warehouse and on his deathbed allegedly confessed to putting arsenic in dumplings. This, however, cannot be proven, and really no one knows if this even happened at all. But do you believe that ELIZA was innocent or guilty? Now, this one is truly the most baffling I have ever researched because there are so many things that really just don't make sense. Did she eat the dumplings to try to commit suicide after she thought she had just murdered her employers and didn't want to get in trouble for it? Or did she simply try the dumplings because she wanted to try the food and wondered why it was strange and blackened and had no idea what went wrong with them? Or maybe perhaps she just wanted a bite of her own cooking and knew that the family had already eaten, so it would be okay if she tried a bite. But then why would she have told her employer not to eat them unless she didn't really think that they tasted that good when she tried them? I mean, I do believe that somebody else was in the kitchen that day with her while she was making the food, but whether ELIZA knew about what they were doing or not, I'm not sure. Now, for some reason, the other staff members that worked at the Turner household make me feel very suspicious. I almost wonder if one of the male apprentices, or I guess even the females, were having an affair with Charlotte or maybe even Robert. Now, maybe Charlotte was having an affair with one of the boy apprentices and that she wanted to break it off, and maybe the apprentice wanted to get back at them. Or maybe it was Robert in one of his fits who wanted to end it for his whole family just because his mind or whatever he had talked about before was telling him to do so. I mean, maybe he had some sort of schizophrenia, or maybe he was just hearing voices. I mean, maybe the other staff members were just done putting up with the Turners and decided to end all of their lives, and now they had a perfect person to blame, which was the new girl that nobody really trusted. I just find that I don't know why ELIZA would have waited a month to poison them if it really was about that one incident in the bedroom where she got in trouble when she was looking for a candle. I mean, why would she have waited a month to do so? I just think that if it was because ELIZA was being treated badly and thought she was going to be fired, maybe Charlotte did treat her badly on the daily, and that was something that was left out of the case, obviously, because the Turners didn't want to look bad. Because maybe Charlotte was jealous of ELIZA. She was a pretty young girl, and maybe Robert was giving her a little too much attention in Charlotte's eyes. But then why would Charlotte poison herself as well? Was it suicide, just like they thought that ELIZA had done because she had poisoned other people and didn't want to feel guilty or go to jail for it? Or perhaps did she not have any at all? You know, Charlotte was the first person to go upstairs and say she had this horrible stomach ache and then everybody else got sick. But I'm not sure how accurate the at-home doctors would have been, or if they could even test that she was actually sick. So could she have just faked it and knew what arsenic would do and just pretended to throw up and be poisoned when really she was just waiting for everybody else to? Now, there are so many theories in this case and no answers, and a woman that was killed before the case could even be investigated further because this case was truly not investigated at all. They just went with what they believed had happened right off the bat, especially, I'm sure, because the family had money and she didn't, and that really made her guilty in everyone's eyes. Except I love to hear that the public did stand up for her the most that they could, and even after she had been hanged. But that is it for this case. It is technically solved since she was hanged. However, many believed that she was wrongfully convicted. But I would love to hear what you think about everything that happened to this case down below. And I really hope you enjoyed my first ever podcast. I hope that it wasn't too rough. I will get better as I go. But remember that I'm posting the first of every month. There'll be a new podcast linked for you guys to listen to. And I also have an email for any of you who don't know. It's formygenuinegems@gmail.com, where you can email me and talk to me a little bit more personally if you want, about anything you want, really, just to give you guys an opportunity to, have someone to talk to if you don't have anyone, or if you just want to get to know a little bit more about me or tell me more about you. It's really just for whatever you want. I just wanted to give you guys the opportunity, rather than just DMing on some sort of social media, to really have like in-depth conversations, because I'm one who doesn't love small talk. I love actually getting to know people, and especially you guys, because you mean so much to me. And yeah, so I hope that everything is going amazing in your guys' lives, and I hope that this podcast makes you happy and that this case was intriguing to you. And also, if you have any more that you want me to do for a podcast, let me know in the comments down below as well. But I think that is it. I will leave you at that, and I will see you either on my YouTube channel in another video here soon, or at the first of next month, which will be 2020, which is so crazy to me. But don't ever forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces. Okay, bye. And I just waved with my hand because I'm so used to being on video. All right, bye.